Hey y'all, it's me Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. So originally I was going to do a reading vlog for the Breath of the Wildathon, which is a Zelda themed readathon. I even recorded the intro explaining everything and technically doing my TBR, which is one of the challenges, like a week before it started just so I didn't have to think about it. And honestly, I just felt ill last week. I did not have the current spreadable issue, but I did have a sore throat and I just had like a little bug. And I was like, nah. I didn't know if maybe I'd read 2 or 3 and just do maybe like a review and just do it by day. But then I just decided, why don't I just do a wrap up, explain what I did, and yeah, just let that be it. So here we are. I am a Zelda fan. I'm not like a fanatic or a super deep Zelda fan. I've only played like 4 of the games, and there's quite a few. And I did love the games I've played, but there are a ton of people in my life who have played like every Zelda game that wasn't like the radio game back in the day, just because we're Americans and we couldn't. But yeah, I do like Zelda, and this readathon only had 3 required books and 2 optional. And it was very flexible and easy. Like, I didn't actually have to check anything out. Like, I found out about the readathon about a week before it started, and I actually already had the books checked out from my library, and the due dates are still not for another week. So here we are. I was like, why not? I've tried to do readathons in the past privately. Like, I've never done them for booktube, obviously. There's only been one I've completed. Like, a lot of times I'll make the list, set everything out, then I just don't do it, or I read one book and just... Because I'm kind of like a moody person in general, whether it comes to books, games, anything. I'm just like, oh, I'm in the mood to do this now, or I'm not. So a lot of times TBRs don't work that well for me, but everything I picked was short and quick. So I figured that would help me out, and I almost did not do this just because I was feeling bad, but I was like, nah, I'm going to try to at least film one in my life and see if I like it. And this one's short. There is a longer version of the readathon either in September or October. I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe I'll do that one too. I haven't decided, but here we go. So I'm not going to go in the complete order that's in the list that they produced out, just because I don't want to, and it makes more sense to me in the order I'm going to say what I did and how I did it. So initially for the Shrine of Resurrection camera trial, it's just a poster TBR. From what little book owl said, it can be like on Twitter, whatever. I originally was going to do a video intro, as I mentioned earlier, to my original video idea, explaining what my TBR was and just let that count. But since I decided that a vlog wasn't what I was going to do, I was in the Discord chat for this readathon, and I just posted a photo to there. And then the next one was the Stasis Trial, which is participate in a reading sprint, which I normally don't do just because I'm in a weird time zone usually compared to people who host readathons, and this was really like no exception. But there were people in that Discord who did their own private like sprints, and that's what I participated in just because it was convenient. And maybe other readathons Discords do this too, but as I mentioned, I never really delved much into this in the past. So maybe that will change my mind, in the future. And I did that on the first day on Monday from like 10 a.m. to like 10:30. So, I mean, it was only 30 minutes, but hey, I technically participated in 2 15-minute ones in the Discord. So I got both of those done, which I think one of them was optional. No, that second one was not optional, the sprint, but I did it either way. I did all of the little things. So now, talk about the books I read. As I said, these aren't going to be in perfect order, just because of what I read. It'll make sense to rearrange it a little bit, which is not the end of the world. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about is the Magnesis Trial. And I'm sorry if I butcher any of these. I am a Zelda fan, but I haven't heard some of these terms actually used vocally, or if I have, it's just been like once, and I'm bad at pronunciating anyways, so here we are. So the first one I wanted to read was Home by Toni Morrison. The challenge was pick a book that you're drawn to. I already had this checked out before I knew about the readathon. I wanted to read more Toni Morrison because I read Beloved and The Bluest Eye, and I loved both of them. This is short. It's only like 120 something pages long, which for Toni Morrison, that is really short. But even though this novella is short, there is a lot to unpack. This is about a Korean war vet named Frank Money, and the name home is basically talking about like within yourself, within people, and even like within community and where you actually live. Like, it's a very compact name, even though it's just one word. And Frank Money is dealing with PTSD from the war. He has to go back to his hometown in Georgia, which he does not want to do because of the way they were treating African Americans at the time. He wants to help his sister, and there's a lot. With Toni Morrison, you definitely have to be focused when you read this. This is not a passive read, and that is not a bad thing. I like books that make you actually like pay a lot of attention and draws you in while being very well written. And the perception changes a good bit, kind of like it does in Beloved. So if you're not paying full on attention, you are going to get confused, even though this is a short book. And I didn't like it because it was sad, but I like that she talked about eugenics in this. A thing about African American history I've noticed a lot of people don't talk about is stuff like the Tuskegee syphilis thing. Like, I think it was from like either the 30s and 40s through the 70s. So I'm pretty sure the eugenics in this had to do with commentary on that, but I could be wrong. There's probably a lot more I don't even personally know about because I know very little in the grand scheme of things, but doctors were doing very abusive experiments with syphilis back in the day on African American men. It's not this experiment that they talk about, or she talks about in this book in particular, but there is a doctor who practices an experimental eugenics type thing on Frank Money's sister, which causes her obviously a ton of health problems. So I like that she tackled that, like that's something that's not talked about a lot. And I'm sure there's other books and stuff. I just personally haven't ran into them very often. So yeah, if you really want something that's like a different read but amazing, go for this. It is a hard read in the sense of emotionally, and you definitely have to focus, but I promise you it is worth it. Okay, so the second book I read, and I'm actually saying these in the order I've read them, but the Cryonis Trial, a book with a wintry vibe. I picked Out of the Silence After the Crash. This is a nonfiction. I picked it mostly because there's snow on the cover, and I knew nothing about the rugby team from Uruguay's plane crash from the 70s. I've actually never heard of it, but after I read this, I looked more into it. There were documentaries and a lot of information about it. I just hadn't personally heard of it. And man, if you don't know nothing about it, this is a story. Like, the fact that anybody survived a plane crash in the Andes mountain when there's like a ton of snow, like this was during like cold weather. They had to protect themselves from like even an avalanche. I'm not going to go through every little detail of the story. This is only one person's perspective who survived. But there is cannibalism talked in this, and a lot Oh my man. Oh man. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. Like, they, it wasn't just the rugby team, but like that was like, I think most of the plane had to do with the rugby team. There was this one guy, and I mean, this is spoilers, but if you know anything about the crash, like, I guess this wouldn't be new, but I'll put a timestamp or something if you want to skip anything about this. And the only reason I mention cannibalism, because when I looked it up, that was like the main talking point of most of the articles that I found. So I guess that's just like a well-known fact. But man, there was a guy who literally survived getting a pole stuck through his stomach, pulled out, just pushed his organs back in. That didn't kill him, but an avalanche killed him. And like, I was trying to think about it, like, could he have survived long? But apparently he wasn't getting infection. And I'm just like, man, like, these people. And they had so much camaraderie, and they really came up with a plan, and they survived this for 72 days. 72 days with basically no food except for the people who died. And when they found them, they weren't underweight or anything. And it just took two dudes to finally get down from whatever mountain that they were on and find somebody to be saved. Everybody assumed everybody in the plane crash died. And man, like, and a lot of these people that survived are still alive. And I think I watched two different ones who did, like, it wasn't TED Talk in particular, but it was like a TED Talk. And hearing them speak, and they're like, man, we survived this, and I just enjoy life afterwards. Like, it's so inspiring. Like, it is. It is so, so inspiring. And if you don't want to read this particular book in particular, man, I just said particular too many times. There's documentaries and stuff like that. There's other books, but I'm definitely going to, like, after I read this, I spent like a day and a half just getting more information about this so much, like as much as I could. And so some of the information I know is a little confused between the documentaries and the interviews and the book, because I did them all basically like in the same day. I spent like 12 hours basically binging this story in particular, not just this book, but I did read this book first. So I'm a little confused on which parts were in the book and which parts were in everything else. But since the story was basically the same, it kind of overlaps anyways. But man, okay, the Temple of Time, a book talking about the passage of time, and I was kind of unsure what this challenge really meant. Did it mean like time travel, talking about time itself, or did just time pass in a book? Because that can really be any book. Like, even if a book took a place in a day, time still passes. So I just picked something that was interesting. It's an optional book anyways, so here we are. Okay, The Trial by Franz Kafka. I've never read any of his books before, but when I started this, apparently a lot of people read Metamorphoses by him that I personally follow, and people in real life, because I went through his other books just to see, like, out of curiosity. Sometimes I do that, and that was when I put in my Goodreads review. And this book was a tad weird, but I liked it. It wasn't like super odd, but it was super frustrating, and not necessarily in the way he writes or the protagonist, but the system that he's in. This is definitely a commentary on don't be blindly following the justice system or authority, because it can get you screwed, which is a very true lesson. Like, you just don't blindly follow things. And I'm not going to spoil this, but basically this guy gets arrested, and he don't know why he's being arrested, and he even hires like a lawyer and everything, and nobody can figure out what he did wrong, but he's allowed to live his life normally while like preparing for the trial and waiting for everything to unfold. And you know, it's It's definitely an interesting read, and I don't know how to explain a lot without spoiling the story, because all the big like parts definitely have to go straight with the commentary of not trusting authority blindly. And like the writing in this was also like very, it's, you could definitely tell this dude's educated. Like, it's not like the vocabulary is not hard to read, but the sentence structure just feels like somebody who wants to, like, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, the writing style is definitely unique. I don't know how to fully describe it. And it's interesting because, like, when the chapter starts, like, it's like 3 chapter names, and then it's like individual chapters each. And I'm not sure if they're supposed to be like sub-chapters within chapters, but the structure itself on that is very interesting. And there are like little doodles, and they're all like basically like silhouettes, and I think that's supposed to make things more mysterious, because you don't know what the crap's going on. Our protagonist doesn't know what's going on. His lawyer doesn't know what's going on. I mean, I guess the court system knows what's going on, but do they really? They're just kind of there. So yeah, if you want like a interesting read, the trial is definitely an interesting read. Okay, so the next 2, the reason why I wanted to group these together, because they're the first 2 books or graphic novels in a series. So I wanted to talk about them together to make things easier. So originally I had a backup for the second one because I haven't read these before, and if I didn't like the second one, I had a manga series checked out, the next volume, and I was like, well, if I don't like the first one of this, I'll just read the manga, because I wanted to kind of keep them similar. Like, these are Western comics, but I didn't want to have like a novel and a comic, so I just picked a comic and a manga. But I enjoyed the first one and went on to the second, and I enjoyed the second one even more. So it's the first 2 of Swamp Thing and by Alan Moore. That's the first one. But I wasn't sure if I was gonna like these. I've seen Swamp Thing in other like heroes comics and stuff, and he's never just stuck out to me. And I didn't like Watchmen by Alan Moore, but I was told like this is a really good graphic novel series to read. There's only 6 of them. I'm also a huge John Constantine fan, and this is where his first appearance is. It's not until a little bit later in the series, because I did look that up without spoilers, but that enough made me go like, oh, so he's in most of the graphic novels in the actual trade back, not like the legitimate comics. So I'll give it a chance, if nothing else, for John Constantine. So technically, I used the second book for the Bomb Trial, which is an action-packed book, Far Away. And then I used the first one for Forest of Spirits, which is anything like supernatural. I didn't know where they were going to fit, but everybody told me like Alan Moore Swamp Thing is definitely more horror-based. There's more supernatural than... He's not the person who invented Swamp Thing, and apparently he picked up the series and just continued and made his own thing, and then he left after whatever issue number finishes off the second trade back, which is what they call when they put them together. But yeah, and then I knew John Constantine had to start there, and John Constantine does magic and deals with demons, so I'm like, okay, there has to be something supernatural going on. And the reason why I do the first one for the optional one, Spirits of the Forest, is because demons pop up in the first one. Aliens pop up in the second one, but not so much demons. John Constantine don't pop up in the first 2, as I mentioned. But I actually really enjoy it. The art style is definitely dated, which is fine. But I know some people don't like that. But this was written when this would have been like the ideal art style. And this is definitely more text heavy than a lot of modern graphic novels I've been reading, which is actually kind of refreshing. And there's a lot more panels. And it goes into like the complexity. Like I never thought about Swamp Thing actually having like a complex like feelings and all that. You know, it's just every time he's in somebody else's stuff, he always talks about the green, you know? So this was nice. This one does have like 3 or 4 filler issues in it towards the end. Not the last one, but towards the end that definitely stand alone. And they weren't bad, but it was definitely interesting to see like Pug, which is about a turtle. It's definitely filler, but I didn't mind it so much. It just gave a little humor to things. So I'm definitely going to keep reading this. And I'm ready. I am ready. Because so far, these 2 were so good. And I read them in one day, basically. Because I enjoyed them so much. And it's taken me everything just not to binge the rest of it instantly. So, guys, that is it. That is my wrap up for Breath of the Wildathon. As I said, I don't know if I will do the one in it's either September or October. I want to, but we'll see how my mood is then. And I had fun doing this. It was only a week long. And if you did this, let me know in the comment section below. If not, if there's any books you think I should have done differently or you want to talk about those books in particular, definitely do that in the comment section below. And I'll see you later.